already detailed to the American people the billions in wasteful spending that we're attacking in this legislation. From surgical precise cuts to waste within foreign aid to halting taxpayer dollars being funneled to the ideologues at PBS and NPR, we're making good on the mandate that Americans gave us. Let me quickly remind everyone that the process we're engaging in is not some sort of flagrant and outlandish anomaly or even a stark deviation from the norm, as some may claim. The Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974 that Congress set up more than half a century ago allows for this process of enacting rescissions of funds to be carried out. This is the same process that has played out in previous Congresses. It's nothing new. Yes, wasteful spending does occur in Washington. The American people know this to be true, and they want to see immediate change. Republicans in the People's House are the ones who are orchestrating that change with the rescissions package and rescissions packages to come. Americans want their tax dollars to be spent prudently and not chucked carelessly at things that do not align with their values and their own fiscal sensibilities. This is not a hard concept to grasp. Republicans understand it quite well, believe me. It's time that we get the rescissions package across the finish line and secure another significant win for the American people. They're looking to us to act. With that, I look forward to today's discussion, and I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. McGovern, for any comments he wishes to make.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And before I go to my opening remarks, I just have a question. I've been following the media reports all day today as we've been awaiting this meeting today. It's been reported that many of the Republicans on the Rules Committee are concerned about the fact that the Jeffrey Epstein issue is not going away. And we had some reporting earlier that from Jake Sherman at Punchbowl that Speaker Mike Johnson and his leadership team were discussing offering an Epstein-related resolution to try to quell the furor of members of the House Rules Committee. Then there's another report that just came out that says that there may be two bills that are being brought before the Rules Committee. One on the rescissions, the rule on the rescissions package, and then a separate rule on Epstein. But we weren't noticed about the second rule, and so I was wondering if the chair could clarify the situation and maybe share with us the language on the Epstein matter. Is it binding? Is it not? Is it? I mean, so I yield to the chair if she could help enlighten us here.
Well, as I often do, I'm concerned about the framing of your question, saying there's a furor among the Rules Committee members.
I'm reading from the press.
From the press. Yeah. Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. As I said, I question the press often for the way the press people characterize things, and I don't know about the furor among the members of the committee. We'll have some time as the meeting goes on for motions, so we'll be dealing with that later.
So, but I guess my request was whether you could share with us the language of, I mean, we're going to offer a motion, and I can tell you right now it's going to be the Kana-Massey bill, but I think, this is an important matter, whether the chair would share with us the language so that we would have some understanding of what we're talking about here today.
Well, we'll look forward to getting your motion, and then we'll respond.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to require some time to be able to digest whatever it is, because, and again, in defense of the reporting that there was a furor, I mean, it is 6 o'clock, and we thought we would be meeting early this morning, so clearly there's been some angst amongst Republican members of this committee. But let me
don't flatter yourself too much. There's not a whole lot of angst over here.
Yeah, it's curious that we're meeting at 6 o'clock.
We're looking forward to passing the rescission package. I can tell you that.
Yeah. So let me give my opening statement here, Madam Chair. What am I even supposed to say at this point? The way the Republican leadership is running this place is astonishingly bad. I mean, the incompetence is stunning. Trump said Republicans would pass a crypto rule in the morning yesterday, but instead you didn't pass it until midnight. Republicans held the vote open for 9 hours and 45 minutes, the longest vote in history, nearly 10 hours for what was supposed to be a 5-minute vote. I mean, how many minutes are in 5 minutes? Is that something Republicans are proud of? Holding a vote open for 10 hours so you can buy off the most extreme elements of your conference? And a nearly 10-hour vote is just the tip of the iceberg this week. Committee meetings noticed before you even know what you're meeting about, then postponed because your leadership is in some back room making God knows what secret deals. And another failed rule. How many times have we held Rules Committee hearings only to watch it all crash and burn on the House floor? Six failed rules under Speaker Mike Johnson alone, and 9 since Republicans took the majority. You know how many rules failed when I was chair of this committee? 0. You know how many rules failed under Speaker Nancy Pelosi? Also 0. I mean, this is aggravating to me because you are wasting our time. You guys are getting your whip counts from live floor votes. That's embarrassing. And it's disrespectful to us, to the process, and most of all to the people we represent. There are real crises demanding our attention, and you're wasting time playing petty games and arguing amongst yourselves. Honestly, if you were in the minority and watching this unfold, what would you say? How would you defend this unserious process? And I think we all know the answer. You would say it's embarrassing, and you would call us incompetent. And while we talk about your rescissions package, please spare us the lectures about cutting spending when this majority just added $4 trillion to the debt so you could give bigger tax breaks to billionaires. The big ugly bill you passed cost 450 times what is being saved with these rescissions. You passed your tax breaks for billionaires, and now you're pretending to pay for them. That's all this is. This bill slashes funding for public broadcasting. It guts global health programs. It undermines foreign aid, including to Ukraine. Actually, none of you even know what's fully in this. You know, we've seen the top lines, but even Republican senators are warning we won't understand the consequences until the damage is done. Make no mistake, Madam Chair, democracy is messy, but this is not the give and take of messy democracy. This is a dumpster fire. This is a tug of war between Republican incompetence and Republican extremism. And sadly, no matter which side wins, the American people lose. And finally, earlier this week, Madam Chair, I gave everyone on this committee a chance to go on record about releasing files related to Jeffrey Epstein. It was an up or down, yay or nay vote on a very simple amendment that says the Department of Justice must preserve and release all the files. That's it. And shockingly, all but one of you voted against releasing those files. The Speaker put out a statement, and I gotta love this. He put out a statement calling it an obscure stunt. I didn't realize offering amendments was obscure. I'm pretty sure we do that all the time. And when it comes to a stunt, nothing in my amendment would have prevented your crypto bills from moving forward. My amendment simply said that in addition to the crypto bills, we're also going to have a vote on releasing the Epstein files. And if it was such a stunt, why did Mr. Norman, one of the most conservative members of this committee, vote with us? I commend him for doing what was right, especially as President Trump has suddenly decided that this whole thing is a hoax, that the files don't exist, and that the people who believe this stuff are, quote, weaklings. But I frankly don't get why the rest of you voted no. Why would anyone vote against releasing files that we've been told, by the way, by the President, by your Attorney General, by your Director of the FBI, by his Deputy Director? We have been told by them that these files show the identities of those who knew that Jeffrey Epstein was sexually abusing children. So I hope all of you had a chance to consult your constituents and your conscience, and I hope that you will vote with us when I again offer a simple amendment to release the files. Because either one of two things is true. Either one of two things is true. Either there's nothing here, and Trump made all this up and conned you guys into believing it. In that case, you know, why would you vote against releasing files that don't exist? Or there are files, and you guys want to keep them hidden because you're afraid what's in them. Which is it? Which is it? And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Scott, you're
I would just like to say, I look forward to an honest, not a political debate on the issue of the Epstein files. But when you look at the definition of all the files would include a list of the victims of the Epstein crimes.
Yeah.
And so I look forward to the debate. Now you had your time. You put legislation in.
You can't censor me, Mr.
You
Scott.
put
can't censor me.
legislation in at 3:56 when the Rules Committee meets at 4, and we were already in this room when you signed it and put it in. It was a political stunt. That's all it was, and we're going to give you a solution to it.
And if you read the amendment, Mr. Scott, you would realize that there are exceptions to protect the victims of these crimes. And by the way, our language has been out.
No, there are not.
Let-
There are not.
In the Massey counter bill, there are.
That is not what you offered. That is not what you offered. You said all the files, and we have a responsibility to protect the victims.
Mr.
And
Scott.
we know where you are.
Yeah, we know where you are, Mr.
You're
Heidi.
the party of child victims. That's why you opened the border.
True.
That's why you opened the border. How many children got raped coming across that border because of what the Democratic Party did?
Who voted to cover up the facts.
Okay. We have a hearing here, and we're going to follow our regular order. Thank you very much. If you, it would be better, Mr. Norman, if we just moved on and we came to you during the questioning. Would you indulge me? Would you indulge me? Thank you, Mr. Norman. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Without objection, any prepared statements our witnesses may have will be included in the record. I now welcome our only panel, Representative Diaz-Balart and Ranking Member DeLauro from the Committee on Appropriations. Your full statement will be submitted for the record, and we ask that you summarize your statement in 5 minutes. Representative Diaz-Balart, I welcome your testimony.
Madam Chairwoman, Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the committee, it's also a privilege to be with the Ranking Member of the Full Appropriation Committee, who I have the greatest respect for. I know you all have had long days and nights. That's what the Rules Committee does. I will try to be very, very brief, Madam Chairwoman. Again, thank you for this opportunity. I appear before you today to testify on the Senate Amendment H.R. 4, which is the Rescission Act of 2025. The rescission package, Madam Chairwoman, before us today is a really important step towards greater fiscal responsibility and accountability, and prudently realigns, starts a process of prudently realigning our national security priorities. The Senate amendment to H.R. 4 would rescind $9 billion, precisely as you mentioned, Madam Chairwoman, including funding for the United Nations, climate change programs, economic and development assistance, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. In addition, distinguished members, the proposal protects, I want to repeat that, the proposal protects existing vital programs, while also, as I mentioned at the beginning, refocusing programs really to their core functions, their designated core functions, including things like life-saving work, protection of American national security, the advancement of American values, and prioritization and the return on investment to the American taxpayer. There's no question, as you all know, that the federal government spends way too much. And this is, again, one more effort to rein in spending, but doing so, Madam Chairwoman, responsibly, thoughtfully. I look forward to any questions in the conversation. And again, I know you've all had, as the Rules Committee always does, long days and nights. So with that, I look forward to the questions, and I will yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz-Balart. Ranking Member DeLauro, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Fox and Ranking Member McGovern, members of the committee, and it is really a pleasure for me to be on this panel with my appropriation colleague, Mr. Diaz-Balart. In addition to being a colleague, he's a friend, and we've worked together on many, many issues over the years. As in June, I remain strongly opposed to this rescission bill, which is a rubber stamp on the Trump administration's stealing from the American people. Since taking office, the Trump administration has stolen funds appropriated by Congress, passed by Republicans and Democrats in the House and in the Senate, and signed into law by the president, the law of the land. Appropriations bills are not a suggestion, they're the laws of the land. And this upends the separation of powers and our constitutional order. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7. Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought, the architect of the administration's efforts to subvert our power of the purse, has made it clear that he wants to end our appropriations process as we know it. According to Politico, and this was an article today, and this is a quote, Vought said he's looking to change the paradigm of the way appropriations has worked, end quote. The article continues, and I quote again, when specifically asked if he would reassure Democratic appropriators that the White House would abide by bipartisan spending agreements or commit to not using rescissions on future appropriations bills, he simply said he would not, end quote. We are on a dangerous and destructive path to degrade and usurp the authority and the prerogatives of the Congress and the Appropriations Committee. I'm afraid we are moving closer and closer to a paradigm, Mr. Vought's paradigm, where the bipartisan appropriations process is completely irrelevant. I underscore bipartisan. This is the only piece of legislation. The appropriations bills are the only pieces of legislation where you must have Democrats and Republicans, House and Senate agree before it can go to the president for a signature. If that conclusion cannot occur, the government shuts down. So he wants to make the process irrelevant, where continuing resolutions, reconciliation, and rescissions are where governing happens. The Appropriations Committee is one of the last places in Congress where bipartisan happens on the Appropriations Committee, and which we're proud of it. This bill will shut down rural television and radio stations, cutting off coverage of local news, eliminating emergency information like severe weather alerts, jeopardizing access to PBS Kids children's programming, Sesame Street, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. The bill rips life-saving support away from hungry, displaced, and sick people in developing countries and conflict zones, and to end programs that prevent conflict and pandemics. The bill abandons the people of Ukraine while they resist Putin's tyranny. The bill puts America last. When we retreat from the world, diplomatically and through our assistance to vulnerable people, America will be alone, without allies, in a less stable world, without the support of the international community. And do you know who will come out ahead? China, Russia, Iran. Just yesterday in the Washington Post, retired Navy Admiral William McRaven, Navy SEAL, four-star admiral, warned that cutting the State Department and USAID will put every American at risk. By the way, he's the admiral who led the effort to capture Saddam Hussein. He said, and this is his quote, and this is, I've got his article right here from the Post. I just have people read it. He says, this is no time to weaken any element of America's power. The dismissal of highly trained diplomats at the State Department and the dismantling of USAID will jeopardize national security and make the military's job more difficult. Our nation's security has never depended on military strength alone. Rather, it relies on collaboration with a strong foreign service and diplomatic corps, end quote. This bill inexplicably carves out the Countering PRC Influence Fund, which while also cutting $500 million in disaster assistance. When people in need see supplies coming through and say, quote, USA, that shows the power of the United States. That will be traded for food aid from China. This is already happening. When Burma experienced a devastating earthquake earlier this spring, instead of the U.S. being first on the scene, China surged to help. The aid that went to people in need was marked as China aid instead of, quote, from the American people, end quote. All of this is being done in the name of combating waste. I will tell you what is waste. 500 tons of food grown by American farmers, destroyed at a cost of $130,000 to American taxpayers because the chaos caused by the dismantling of USAID left it to expire. The same thing is happening to family planning and HIV prevention supplies. This is a bill to help Republicans claim they are practicing fiscal responsibility while concealing that what they are doing is ripping away health insurance from at least 17 million Americans in order to make billionaires more rich, increases our debt by almost $4 trillion. It codifies the right of the Trump administration to steal from rural and vulnerable American communities, children, and the global poor for the sake of handing more money to billionaires. Congress needs to reassert its role and its fight for the middle class, for the working class, and the vulnerable, not protect the interests of billionaires and big corporations. Strongly oppose this bill, which forfeits our global leadership, undermines our national security, and steals from the American people. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. DeLauro. Ms. Fishbach, you're recognized for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I won't belabor the point. I appreciate that we are taking up the rescissions bill. I think it's important that we move it forward. We are talking about saving money, and I recognize that there'll be a different opinion on the other side, but this is necessary when we look forward and we are in the kind of debt we are in. We need to do this, and so I appreciate you bringing the bill forward, and I am happy to support it, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Fishbach. Mr. McGovern, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, before I get to my questions, let me just say one other thing on the Epstein issue. Mr. Scott raised a point that he didn't get our amendment in advance. We'll provide you the amendments we're going to offer today in advance, so that, and including how it is specifically stated that there will be protections for the victims. And I think we would appreciate if you would share with us what, in fact, you're going to do, so that we have a chance to be able to digest it. Maybe, in fact, we might agree. I don't think we'd agree if it's non-binding, because then it's just a glorified press release. But I think we will make the text of our amendments available, so you can go through them, during this hearing, and any questions you have, you could then ask them. But we would appreciate you doing the same to us. And with that, let me just say, the Republican chairwoman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Susan Collins, she said the following in opposition to this rescissions package, and I quote, she said, "The rescissions package has a big problem. Nobody really knows what program reductions are in it. That isn't because we haven't had the time to review the bill. Instead, the problem is that OMB has never provided the details that would normally be part of this process. For example, there are $2.5 billion in cuts to the Development Assistance Account, which covers everything from basic education to water and sanitation to food security. But we don't know how those programs will be affected," end quote. Again, these aren't my words. These are the words of the Republican chairwoman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. So, Mr. Diaz-Balart, I'm puzzled by this. Do you somehow have more information than the entire Republican leadership in the Senate? I mean, do you know what specific programs will be cut in this rescissions package? Or are you comfortable voting to cut billions of dollars in foreign aid, without knowing the specifics?
If I may, Madam Chairwoman, thank you, and thank you for the question. So obviously, I have the highest respect and admiration for the Honorable Chairwoman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Let me tell you my circumstances. I actually had multiple meetings with OMB, including the head of OMB, where we discussed these issues at length. As a matter of fact, I actually was able to give him different proposals and different alternatives, and he took a number of those alternatives. Did he take 100% of those alternatives? No, because, the people are free to do what they want. But I will tell you, do I have a pretty good idea as to what this bill does? Of course I do. And remember, it's very similar to what the House already passed, and which was widely discussed. Now, let's also put another thing and put it in perspective. As the Honorable Chairwoman mentioned, and I did too in my short opening statement, we're talking about $9 billion. While $9 billion is a substantial chunk of change, there's a heck of a lot of money left over. And to reassure you, this week, we passed the subcommittee legislation that funds all of these issues, foreign aid, foreign policy, et cetera, out of subcommittee. We're already in that process. I wish I could tell you that I specifically know when we'll go to full committee, but I expect to do that soon. So that process has already started, and that process is ongoing, and it's a deliberative process. And I think you can expect, Mr. McGovern, as I've done already, and we're going to continue to do, we're going to look through with a very sharp pencil, putting that bill together. This rescission package is $9 billion. And there are a lot of different areas, and if you want to speak about some specific areas, we can.
Like, for example, I asked the question that Chairwoman Collins asked. There are $2.5 billion in cuts to the Development Assistance Account, which covers everything from basic education to water sanitation to food security. But we don't know how these programs will be affected. So is that $2.5 billion coming out of basic education? Is it coming out of water and sanitation? Is it coming out of food security? I'm just looking for the, where's it coming from? The bill also includes $500 million in cuts to global health programs. What specific programs are being cut under what global health program? Yeah, go ahead.
And I think it's a valid question. So in fiscal year 25, the Development Assistance Program was $3.9 billion. The rescission package proposes to pull back $2.5 billion, as you just mentioned. So I don't think it's a secret that the Biden administration, unfortunately, didn't spare this area either in promoting, frankly, wasteful, radical, controversial items in this area as well. So I would tell you that the Trump administration wisely, in my opinion, paused everything and undertook a careful review, something that I think was merited. And so, Mr. McGovern, this actually caused a pipeline of funding to build up. This account was often used to support climate change programs under the guise of development programs, which is something that the American people, I think, don't support. So prior year balances can be used to support development programs that are in the national interest. And so, again, I would argue that there is adequate funding to do what we need to do once we stop doing the things that were wasteful, that were controversial, and that actually, in many cases, hurt our national security interests.
Is there a list somewhere? Because, nothing in your rescissions bill says anything about, the specifics. If you really wanted to cut those programs, wouldn't you specifically say that in your bill, that I want to cut, this line item and this particular program? I will tell you, I will agree with my colleagues here that there were some Biden-era programs that were not the most efficient use of federal dollars, and we should go back and we should maybe reevaluate them. And I'd be happy to work with my Republican colleagues on those items, but that's not what we're talking about here. This rescissions bill would pull back unobligated funds that have not yet been spent on any specific contract or program. And Trump is now president, not Biden. I don't think you're accusing, or maybe you are accusing the Trump administration of funding woke and wasteful programs. But here's the fundamental truth. Because Republicans have issues with a few extremely small grants, they want to rip away global health programs and cut funding for public radio stations that tell Americans when there has been an earthquake, like the 7.3 magnitude quake that just hit Alaska. And for all of our districts that have been hit by devastating natural disasters or are currently going through one, let's not miss the forest, for the trees. I mean, Ranking Member DeLauro, let me ask you the same question. Do you know what specific programs are going to be cut here in this rescissions package? Because I sure as hell don't know.
Yeah,
And
well-
I haven't been given a list.
Yeah, no, I think you put your finger on what the issue is. And look, I have the greatest respect. I worked very, very closely with Senator Collins, Senator Murray, as well as with Chairman Cole. But I think Senator Collins, question is appropriate. We don't know how those programs will be affected. So on the development assistance side, this is really, the Office of Management and Budget really has failed in a spectacular fashion to complete the most basic function. It cannot justify this rescissions proposal. No concrete details to inform either chamber, House or Senate, about what they would choose to cut with the broad authority to devastate investments that are in this bill. They're not telling us what they will cut, because they're going to cut what they want, when they want, and they do not think that you or me or Ranking Member Diaz-Balart or Chairwoman Fox or anybody in the House and Senate are the people that we represent deserve to know what is going on. It's my understanding, and I saw too in the dialogue about this, is Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota said that even though he initially opposed the bill, he would support it because he got assurances from the Trump administration they would, quote, find Green New Deal money that could be reallocated, but not a shredded detail. Now, when I talk about the public broadcasting side, I can talk about specifics because they cut all of the federal funds, all of the federal funds. By statute, 70% of federal funds for public media are awarded directly to locally owned public television stations and public radio stations. So in other words, approximately $750 million of the funds being rescinded will come from eliminating small grants to local stations and rescinding the funds. We've talked about, I think the best thing said about rescinding the funds, what Senator Murkowski said, this was the threat to public safety and emergency alerts. 7.3, you mentioned it, Mr. McGovern, 7.3 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Alaska. She noted that it was public broadcasting stations that relayed tsunami warnings that enabled local residents and summer tourists to evacuate to safe locations. So if you look at public broadcasting, they've cut everything. We haven't got a clue of what they are going to do on the development assistance side.
So I guess the answer to my question is that we don't have the specifics.
No.
And that really is troublesome to me, just as a member of the House of Representatives, a member of Congress, is because, I mean, that's what we do. And Mr. Diaz-Balart, I don't agree with you on everything, but there's lots of stuff we do have common ground on. And, we fight to get funding in to bills to make sure that some of these priorities are adequately resourced. But I think that's the way it's supposed to. I think Congress should have a role in all of this. And it seems like we're just kind of handing over all these decisions to the administration. And my last question, do you know anything about this special sweetheart deal that South Dakota got? I'm calling it the Prairie Payoff. Do you know what Senator Rounds got to vote for? I mean, these little deals that are being made that I think we're going to find out, in a week or 2 or 3 weeks, and we're all going to be kind of shocked that these deals were made. Look, Senator Tom Tillis said, and I quote, "I suspect we're going to find out that there are some things that we're going to regret," end quote. Roger Wicker, again, another Republican, quote, "In this situation, there's a specific amount stated that will be rescinded, but this Congress will not be allowed to choose those specific cuts. That will be done by somebody in the Office of Management and Budget in the White House. And in this situation, it will amount to the House and Senate basically saying, we concede that decision voluntarily to the executive branch, end quote. And you know, I don't think, whether it's a Democrat in the White House, Republican, that we should blindly trust any administration on these matters. I mean, we have a role here in the House, and I think we're forfeiting that role. Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point, but I don't think any of us know what the hell is going to happen. Ms. Delora, you want to add one thing?
Well, I just want to say, I think you made a very strong point. I just go back to the, to the congressional power and the power of the purse. That has been abdicated here in both the House and in the Senate. And that is to Mr. Vote's, that's what he wants to do. As I said, he is looking to this new, what he calls a new paradigm. And that what we've had for really the history here, the kind of, it is a bipartisan appropriations process. And I will fight for a bipartisan appropriations process. But he wants to make that irrelevant. So he wants to rule by continuing resolution, reconciliation, rescissions, and that's how he sees this all is all happening. And I will tell you to anyone, and I don't know what commitments he made to you, my colleague, Mr. Diaz-Balart, or what he made to Mr. Rounds, but flat out, you can't really trust him. He said he lied about PEPFAR rescissions previously in the in legislation. He made this promise to the South Dakota. Who knows? He makes promises that he can't keep. I only know what he wants is that he wants to eviscerate the appropriations process, and he wants to concentrate that power of spending when he wants, what he wants, in the power of OMB. I will just say that if Shalonda Young had done this, my God, what an outcry there would be about what was happening here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Mr. Norman, you're recognized.
Well, thank both of you for taking time to come out. Let me just say, you know, the American people are excited about these cuts, the rescissions. You know, Ms. McGovern, it's up to you to propose your cuts. I never saw anything during the Biden administration that you proposed at any level other than more government, more and more government. And the American people are sick of it.
Defense cuts.
$9 billion.
A lot of them.
That I wish were far greater. Hopefully in the next rescission package, we will double that amount. And what Elon Musk has done is to reveal to the taxpayers where their money is going. I can name a list of them, starting with the $135 million to the World Health Organization, gone. $158 million to the Lebanese peacekeeping mission, gone. $3 million for the Iraqi Sesame Street, gone. $6 million for net zero cities in Mexico, gone. This is just a list. You can parse any one of them and object to them, but I've never seen, you'll spend other people's money, but you won't give the money back to the taxpayers and the economy. Mr. McGovern, you know, it's so rude for you to interrupt. This is my time.
Yeah, it's rude.
I don't interrupt you, and it's not your time. You and Jerry Nadler, you know, you've never seen anybody that you don't want to interrupt. It's not only can you not understand when two people are talking, I've never interrupted you one time, and you need to get some manners to you. But all I'll say is that what we're doing, what this president is doing, is making this country over again. The economy is showing it. Would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Mr. Norman. I just an observation. Look, and if it sounds like my colleague appropriator, Democrat appropriator, and I have disagreements, we do, but yet we have a great relationship, we do. And so we do have serious disagreements. I, however, have zero doubt of her fierce trying to protect, right, the power of the purse. And that there we agree. And so, but Mr. Norman, I may be wrong, but this rescission, yes, is to spend a little bit less money, which I think is a good thing. And by the way, this is a process that's in law. So when one may complain about, the process, but this is a process that's established in law. I don't know, and I may be wrong, I don't remember the outrage when, for example, a Democratic president decided to spend money that was neither authorized nor appropriated. And then, by the way, when the Supreme Court of the United States said that's unconstitutional, he kept doing it anyways. Now, again, I want to be respectful. I may be wrong, because you all are here all the time and you all discuss these things. So from what I'm hearing, it must be that all of you agreed during that moment that when a president spent more money that was neither authorized or appropriated by Congress, and then the Supreme Court said, hey, that's unconstitutional, and he did it anyways, I'm sure that was bipartisan outrage. Of course it must have been, right? But we know it wasn't. Here, what we're dealing with is $9 billion through a legislative legal process. You mentioned some of the issues that are cut. And I just think that this is a responsible, reasonable proposal, which is why I'm respectfully supporting it. And thank you for yielding me some of your time, sir.
Well, I'd say, too, that it's a teardrop in the ocean compared to what we owe, and where my Democrat friends are just willing to bankrupt this country and spend us into oblivion. We're not, and we're making strides, and we're going to continue to make strides. And what I was going to say earlier, Mr. McGovern keeps mentioning Epstein. During the 4 years of the Biden administration, what did we hear from them? They had information then, crickets, nothing. What did they hear on the information they buried on January 6th? Crickets, nothing. So this is a day of transparency, and it's a day that we're going to identify a lot of problems. Overspending is one of them. I look forward to many more rescission cuts, including the pocket rescissions.
Mr. Norman?
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And we do, I think everyone on this side of the aisle wants to thank Mr. Norman for his vote earlier this week in favor of releasing the Epstein files, because we think this is something that clearly already has some bipartisan support, and we think it should move forward on that basis. But we're here primarily about the rescissions package, which, with this package, I think the White House and congressional Republicans have sunk to a new low. We're here in yet another emergency rules committee hearing because the right-wing zealots and Project 2025 authors who are calling the shots in this Trump White House find democracy and the rule of law to be inconvenient barriers to their extremist agenda. So instead, they want to rule this country through a combination of fear and make-believe emergencies. This time, they're trying to cut federal funding for some uniquely impactful programs with broad bipartisan public support, including public radio and television, and global healthcare and hunger relief programs that are widely acknowledged as being critical services for local and especially rural American communities, and that are important to both our national security and our moral standing in the world, particularly with respect to the USAID programs. I hear frequently from constituents who are parts of faith groups, including our Catholic charities and colleges, our mainline congregations, our Quaker friends, as well as our local Rotary clubs and other nonprofit groups, that they value these programs and believe that they should receive more support, not less. So why are they under attack? Because the Republican Party under Trump claims that these important programs, which benefit the general public and our national security, must be cut in order to reduce the national debt. The hypocrisy is astonishing. Not even 2 weeks ago, Republicans voted on a strict party line basis to put the country $4 to $6 trillion deeper in debt, not so they could lower costs for Americans, not so they could improve Americans' health and well-being or address the existential threat of climate change, but to give the mega rich a bigger tax cut at the expense of all other Americans. In fact, they rammed through their grotesque, big, ugly bill, knowing that it will slash health care for millions of Americans, including nursing home residents, children with disabilities, and hardworking, low-income Americans just trying to get ahead. It will end SNAP food assistance for hungry Americans, and it will repeal long overdue environmental protection measures that had already started to reduce energy costs and protect vulnerable communities. And now Republicans want to zero out funding for NPR and PBS and programs that undergird American influence abroad, ostensibly in the name of deficit reduction. This rescission package is a cruel joke. The pattern is clear. The Trump administration, aided and abetted by congressional Republicans, is getting services for working Americans, shielding the powerful, and calling it fiscal responsibility. We hear lies about deficit reduction and cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, only to see Trump and the Republicans add trillions to the debt. We hear lies about making the government more efficient, and then see Republicans slash funding for some of the government's most efficient programs while firing and defunding effective government watchdogs. We hear lies about the actions of prior administrations only to distract from this administration's abuses and cover-ups. Meanwhile, Republicans are ignoring real areas of waste, fraud, and abuse, whether in the financial and tech sectors, at the Pentagon, or with Big Pharma, with the private prison contractors that they're paying to lock up law-abiding members of our communities, because going after that fraud, that waste, that abuse would hurt their campaign donors. And then there's the waste and abuse being committed by this administration on a daily basis. Just this week, we learned that the Trump administration is going to destroy 1 million pounds of international food aid. This is food that was produced and purchased from American farmers with taxpayer dollars, but that has been allowed to rot in warehouses because this administration blocked its distribution and then ignored warnings that it would go to waste. Let this sink in. American taxpayers are going to pay for the purchase and destruction of 1 million pounds of food that was supposed to feed 1.5 million malnourished children. This isn't just un-American, it's immoral. It violates every humanitarian norm. So what we get under Trump's Republican Party is a mountain of debt, millions losing their health care, millions going hungry, and with this bill, millions around the globe losing their lives, while here at home, millions will lose their local radio and public television. The fits and starts with which both this rescission bill and the big ugly bill have moved also point to another important anti-democratic trend. These bills have been stalled repeatedly, not with bipartisan negotiations, but by a Republican legislative agenda that screws over the American people. But when those schemes screw over the wrong Republicans, that Republican senator or member of Congress goes and begs the White House for a sweetheart deal to exempt their state or their district from whatever havoc the bill is creating nationwide. This naked influence peddling and partisanship is an astonishing breach of the principle that Congress and the White House should serve all Americans, not just their partisan allies or donors. If your Republican cuts are good for my constituents, then they should be good enough for your constituents too. Now, with the White House, the House, and the Senate under Republican control, the apparent operating theory of government is now to use the power of the federal government to benefit themselves, their friends, and families at the expense of everyone else, at the expense of the nation, and at the expense of our collective future. As we stand on the brink of our nation's 250th anniversary, it is sickening to see the damage to our American constitutional order, which was formed and has always been grounded in fairness and the rule of law. It is a disgrace. And this is a disgrace that our founders sought to prevent. They designed a constitutional system to prevent demagogues from sowing confusion, manipulating public passions, and abusing the rule of law. The separation of powers among the three branches of government is supposed to hold each branch in check. but that requires that Congress, and specifically the majority of Congress, live up to its constitutional duty instead of cowering in fear or acting the fool. And until the House and Senate majorities grow a spine, we are all of us in peril. So, Ranking Member DeLauro, the last time a rescission measure passed the House, I believe, was over 30 years ago. So it is not something that is part of our normal order of business. Can you comment at all on this rescission package and the specificity or lack thereof, and how it might compare to prior rescission packages?
Well, the point in fact is I say that the OMB director, Russ Vought, has designed a system to remove the Congress and the Appropriations Committee in this aspect, to eviscerate it, so that the power to make a decision of what amount of money will be spent, where it will be spent, how it will be spent, no matter what the Congress has directed. These are congressional directed dollars. And he has the view that he has the authority to do that. He can't do that. There's no inherent authority to do it. The rescission piece of it, yes, is a lawful process under the Impoundment Control Act, and they don't even believe, he doesn't believe in the Impoundment Control Act. But this was a way for him to codify the cuts that he would like to make, because it just doesn't like it. How we can, and that's, you know, not been the case in point. Look, I would be opposed to this under any administration. I fought with the Biden administration when we, and I'll be very self-serving. I moved forward to say that OMB had to let us know what money it was spending and what they were apportioning for various funds, and they had to make that public. They did not want to do that. I had this conversation, but we did it because the public has a right to know where their dollars are going. And under this process, and when we look at this rescission package, particularly on the international development assistance, we have no idea what they're doing or where they are going with this. So it is really unprecedented, but unprecedented based on a construct of Russ Vought, the OMP director, that remove appropriations, amass the power, and it's not even power for the president, I might add. He is amassing that power for himself. And that somebody who is unelected, we're going to turn over, that this body, House, Senate, turn over that power to this individual. I find that unconscionable. If I may make a couple of points, and I wanted to say that with my colleague, we agree and we disagree, as he's pointed out. But Chairman Diaz-Balart understands the value of some of these programs. He knows the value of supporting voices for democracy over authoritarianism, and that we need to keep funding long-term development and education, agriculture to support our partners, build stability over time. As he has mentioned, he funds these programs. So these programs are being gutted with this rescission, and we have to consider that. And my final point, and I want to, if I can, to Mr. Norman. Mr. Norman, today, this president is spending billions of dollars that is lawfully unavailable to him. Congress has not approved it. The OMB director vote has really tricked the president into spending it anyway, against the law. I would be happy to sit with you to go through this with you, and and I would hope we could join together to hold him, or quite frankly, any president accountable. And I'm happy to follow up with you. That's not the issue that we are focused on here today, but it has to do with how the appropriations process works, what the agreements were in the past, what money was allocated, how it was supposed to be used. And that's the law. So I just leave it there. I hope I've answered the general.
No, I think you did. And I just wanted to clarify one more thing. So the bill before us today, this rescission package, was prepared by Russell Vought, who's the head
Yes.
of the Office of Management and Budget.
Right, that's right.
He also is the primary author of Project 2025,
That's
is he
right.
not? Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, he is.
And so this package would legitimize the cuts that the Office of Management and Budget and this author of Project 2025 have made without Congress's
Well,
input.
he in Project 2025, I read it carefully, you
Same.
know, he talks about empowerment. When he went for his confirmation hearings, you know, ruled in, you know, that it was impounded, because he said empowerment is, that is the inherent authority of the executive. And again, I've quoted here before, not the case. Judge Antonin Scalia opined on this. Judge Kavanaugh has opined on this, that there is no inherent authority. But I also want to be clear that the rescission piece of that, the 45-day piece, is something that does come out of the Impoundment, you know, Control Act. It is just upending both the constitutional power of the purse that the Congress has, and to eviscerate and hopefully eliminate, and for the life of me, an appropriations process. I'm going to fight to the death for the power of the Appropriations Committee, because I believe in it. I believe in what it has done and the difference that it's made in a bipartisan way. I crafted deals with Tom Cole that increased the amount of money for the NIH, that funded Gear Up and TRIO and education programs that made a difference, that we looked at these areas, and and also with Congressman Diaz-Balart, with what we've done. And what they did here was to carve out Egypt. They carve out certain pieces. They want to spend it in Egypt and Jordan and spend it in any way they want. But we need an obligation to Jordan to do that. They're the stabilizing force in the Middle East. But you can't pick and choose depending on who you like and who you don't like, and who you support politically and don't support politically. That is not the process. We have an established process here, which is called the appropriations process, which deals with that money. And while the president can want to make changes, he needs to come back to the Congress to make those changes. That is the piece that is missing here, totally.
Well, obviously, we appreciate the work that you and Chairman Cole do with appropriations. He, of course, is a longtime member of this committee. And we appreciate the appropriations process, but I would say even behind that, we have the constitutional process pursuant to Article 1, where it's Congress that makes the laws and funds the government, and not the executive. So thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Roy, you're recognized.
Thank the chairwoman. Just a couple of quick things. And I would ask the chairman, just real quick, if I'm correct, there are significant previous presidents have submitted rescissions in the past, including Democrat presidents such as President Clinton. True?
Yes, sir, because it is under the law. It's allowed, this is part of the legal process.
Part of the law. It's a normal part of the process.
Correct, sir.
Following the law. And so, you know, we can debate which things we choose to cut or not, but the fact is it's a normal part of the process.
Correct.
Secondly, we're talking about $9 billion, correct?
That's correct, sir,
Total outlays for the federal government this year, $7 trillion.
approximately.
So we're talking about 0.00012 or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, 0.133%. Okay. But like 0.13% or something. Yeah. So we're talking about a tiny fraction, right, of our overall spend, right?
I would agree.
So, but in the process of doing that, what we're trying to do is clean up a significant amount of the spending. Is that right?
Mr. Roy, if I may,
Yeah.
I think it doesn't pass the smell test to say that every penny that the federal government spends is well spent, obviously. But I would argue, and I think it's pretty easy to be proven right, that in particular in the last 4 years, the amount of waste and misspending was so outrageous that there needed to be a pullback. And this is an attempt to do just that.
And so, and with, people have gone through various lists, and people have different priorities in life, but I can just tell you the people who sent me to Texas, sent me from Texas to Washington, they didn't want us to do $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. They didn't want us to do $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. They didn't want me to do $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt. And look, I understand people have their priorities. They think some idea is a good idea. Go, okay, we got to help the Egyptians. Let's go help them with some tourism. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of good reasons to go to Egypt without that, but okay. But $6 million, well, that's $6 million. We're $37 trillion in debt. $45 million for DEI scholarships in Burma. I can go down a complete list of just some crazy things. $3 million for Iraqi Sesame Street. We can go down the list. These lists are public. My point being, there's a lot of stuff in here that we're trying to clean up what we're spending. Again, $9 billion out of the $7 trillion in outlays. Now, there's probably more coming. And I know that there are some concerns for that. But is Director Vogt, is he operating in any way outside of the law by doing this?
I'm glad you asked that, because at the introduction of this meeting on this issue, the Honorable Chairwoman talked about that this is established in law. This process is established in law. And I obviously have great respect for everybody here, but I will tell you, Mr. Roy, I was a little taken back because I think it is absolutely healthy to disagree, right? I was taken a little bit aback when you, the OMB director, try to disqualify a person who, by the way, Senate confirmed. Now, I may have disagreements, you may have disagreements, but I have to admit I was taken back when you try to disqualify an individual because you disagree with that individual. And I frankly have to admit, I take exception with that attitude. As well as I mentioned a little while ago, sir, this is a legal process, number one. Number two is there is a egregious violation of a president spending money neither authorized nor appropriated, and it's not me saying it, Mr. Roy. The Supreme Court of the United States said that. Where was the outrage by some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, Mr. Roy? And so again, to your point, yes, thank you. This is a legal process. It's fine to agree or disagree with some of the cuts, obviously. It's a legal process. Can we absorb it? Absolutely. And by the way, again, the appropriations process, which is a big part of this, has already begun.
Two more quick questions. You obviously focus a lot of your attention as an appropriator in areas such as the United Nations, World Health Organization, et cetera. My understanding is that HR4 rescinds $33 million, but that's up $1.5 billion appropriated in fiscal year 2024 in the United Nations. And then it's going after things, for example, like UNRWA and programs that have been severely discredited in terms of their support for our enemies and the enemies of Israel and enemies of our allies. Do you believe that this is the sweet spot in trying to clean up some of the mess and how the dollars have been flowing overseas while still maintain some of our engagements with these entities?
Well, again, the Secretary of State has clearly said we're going to continue to do things that are important abroad for the national security interests of the United States. We're just going to do it in a way that supports our national security interest. And not, you mentioned some of the wasteful programs. There's so many others, and we can go on for days talking about that. So you also asked the question specifically about, for example, the UN. Both in fiscal year 24 and this in the appropriations bill in fiscal year 25. And I think you might be glad to hear that in the fiscal year 26 bill that was passed out of subcommittee this week, we defund the general fund of the UN. We defund UNRWA. We defund the World Health Organization. But I think it's important to put some things on the record. Look, I just mentioned, for example, the bill fiscal year 24 and 25, the appropriations bill. I have here, and again, I respect it, but I have here in writing the press release put together by the Democratic leaders of the Appropriations Committee, and I respect their opinion. I disagree with it. And let me tell you some of the things. I've highlighted some of the things here that we, the appropriators, in the case it was my bill, right, that they complained that we were eliminating funds for. And let me just read it out loud. They were upset that we had a prohibiting funding for the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the EcoHealth Alliance, gain of function research, and any lab controlled by China, Russia, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, they say Russia twice, and Venezuela. So we have a difference in opinion. We think that funds for things like this are not only wasteful, they hurt our national security interests. If I may, I don't want to go through this ad nauseum, but for example, another thing that we were criticized for is a prohibition of funds for the government of the People's Republic of China or the Chinese Communist Party, and that we prevent lending through the international financial institutions to the People's Republic of China. If I may, also not upset, they were, pointing out that they opposed cutting funds because we said no funds can be used to revoke the designation of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a foreign terrorist organization. Now, Mr. Roy, I respect that our friends on the other side of the aisle don't want to cut any spending. I respect that they believe, I guess, that everything is well spent, but I would argue that history would show us that when they are supporting funding things that I just read for you, this is in writing, and I respect their opinion on it, and I would also argue that thinking that $9 billion rescission is going to somehow end the world, to your point, because every penny is so well spent that we shouldn't touch any of it, I would respectfully say I strongly disagree. This is a step in the right direction, and I think, hopefully, pretty soon, I hope to be able to come in front of you with the fiscal year 26 appropriations bill dealing with these issues, and hopefully, again, hopefully in that moment we can count for your support. I'm not asking for it now because you haven't seen it, but I think you might be pleased with some of those issues that we have in that bill.
Well, I thank my friend from Florida, and since the gentleman from Florida has used more than my time, I will only close by saying this because it's been so important to the people in my community, because a lot of folks here are talking about and extolling the virtues of NPR, PBS, public broadcasting, and so forth, and talked about how they're cutting their funding is somehow going to endanger communities and rural communities. Well, when the floods were hitting the people that I represent, it took NPR through Texas Public Radio 19 hours to post anything about the flooding on its social media. What was NPR and TPR doing in the interim? What were they doing in the morning at 4, 5, 6, 7 in the morning when private radio stations that I listened to and that I talked to were breaking in and presenting the information of the news? They were playing a program, a DC-based program, lobbying Congress for billions of dollars to continue their funding. When the flood hit at 4 in the morning, instead of providing local news, they were airing the morning edition of the Washington, D.C. Well, that's fine. They already had it pre-taped. I get that. But they didn't break in like the local stations did and so forth. The 7 private stations posted over 70 alerts on their social pages throughout the day, starting at 7:24 in the morning. My point being, private stations in the communities in which I live were there for the people of Texas. They were there presenting the information necessary. And the public stations were completely MIA. And with that, I yield back to the chairwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Would you like, Mr. Chairman, to enter any of that material that you read into the record?
That would be great, and I would ask that.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.
Well, I think the chairwoman, I do just want to say to the gentleman from Texas, who I have great respect for, and I certainly am keeping his constituents his community is in my prayers. I will say, his experience with respect to public radio and public television, vastly different than mine. I represent the state of Colorado. My district has been besieged by multiple natural disasters, flash floods, wildfires, and on every occasion, public television, public broadcasting, public radio stations, Colorado Public Television, Rocky Mountain PBS have been there. And I would take umbrage to the suggestion. I'm not going to speak for other members and their respective experiences in their districts or their states, but I will certainly say for the state of Colorado, public television has played an instrumental role in helping constituents during difficult times of need. I want to say thank you to the ranking member and to the subcommittee chairman. Welcome back. Good to have you both here. Mr. Diaz-Balart, Chairman, I want to ask you a couple of questions. So first, how much is the total dollar figure for the rescissions package?
I believe it's $9 billion. I can get you
$9 billion? Okay.
Yes.
And I think you described that, I wrote this down, as a substantial chunk of change.
I think it's a good down payment in trying to
those are your words.
refocus.
Those are your, I'm not,
Yep.
I wrote them down earlier. So $9 billion, substantial chunk of change. Would it surprise you to learn that that is 0.12%? 0.12% of the federal budget? Would that number surprise you? Or?
I'd take your word for it, sir.
Okay. And I presume you're pursuing this rescissions, at least you've articulated it in part, it's animated by concerns about the debt and by the deficit.
Well, if I may, sir.
No, I'm just asking if it is or if it isn't. If it's not, if you have no concerns.
One of the factors. That's one of the factors.
That's a fair
That's
answer.
one of the
So
factors.
I guess the question is, House Republicans, literally 15 days ago, voted for a bill that will increase the deficit by upwards of $4 trillion. $4 trillion. And your case here is that this $9 billion rescission, which you call a substantial chunk of change, that's animated by concerns for the deficit. I mean, it feels like if you were concerned about the deficit, voting against that big bill a few weeks ago would have been the right way to do it. Yes?
If I may, remember, again.
You disagree?
Well, let me tell you what I agree with, if you would allow me. Thank you. So as I said, this is to refocus an area of spending that has been misspent, severely misspent. Not only has it been misspending American taxpayer money, I would argue that it's actually been doing so in a way that in some cases has actually not only not helped our national security interests, has hurt our national security interests.
understand your
So
argument.
this is a multifaceted,
That's
there's
one of the
many
factors.
reasons why this is an important
And I'm asking
start.
you about the deficit reason. I hear you. You
Yeah.
said that. It was a fair answer.
Correct.
You said I have multiple
Correct.
reasons for supporting this.
Correct, sir.
And I'm myopically focusing here on the first reason, which is you believe we should pass this rescissions package so that we can reduce the debt by $9 billion. And 15 days ago, you voted for a bill that increases the deficit by $4 trillion. You can understand why the American people would be a bit confused by that difference.
Well, if
No?
Well, no, look, if you're saying that this is the only thing we're going to do to reduce the deficit, that would be
What
highly...
else have you all done?
That would be highly inaccurate.
Have you done anything else?
Yes, we have. As a matter of fact, one of the things I'm very proud of is that the fiscal year 24 appropriation bills, it deals with my area,
Yeah.
right, that I chair, which, by the way, is in essence what we're under now, because as you know, we're under a CR.
CR, correct.
Right? Actually reduced 6%. And this
was
is
last year.
after the
That's
negotiations.
last year.
Correct. And
Yeah, no, I'm talking about this year.
well, but if you would allow me to finish. Sure. So, and the bill that I have presented that passed out of subcommittee is proposing, again, you know, we have a long way to go, 22% reduction over last year's, which was a 6% reduction. So, in other
much is
words,
that?
we are taking serious steps to reduce spending, to reduce the deficit, and equally as important is to make sure that the money that we do spend is well spent, and in this case,
I understand that
reflects
reason.
and helps the national security interests of the United States.
You've made the case on that, the secondary reason, which
Thank
we're going
you.
to talk about, but I...
Well,
and I
actually,
don't- and I-
it's not, to me, it's not a secondary,
No, not
it's a
secondary.
very important
Secondary
reason.
might be that's the wrong adjective. The
Fair
other
enough.
reason, there are
Fair
many
enough.
reasons, so, and I don't want to belabor the point here. But I mean, we could spend some time. I mean, if your argument is that if we total up the ledger, okay, so you've got, $9 billion rescission here, and I guess you're citing the fiscal year 2024 cuts that you had shepherded as chairman of your subcommittee. I don't know what the total dollar number is on that, but I'm guessing that in the aggregate, if you added it all up, it wouldn't come close to the $4 trillion deficit increase that you have saddled my children and your children, your grandchildren with. And again, part of this about priorities. I understand your argument about the other reasons. And so that might, you make the case, as you've done. But I think it's a little rich for anybody to talk about this rescissions package as a deficit reduction or debt reduction measure, because the American people are not going to take that seriously after the $4 trillion bill last week. That's all I'm saying.
And I think it's fair enough because I think it is obvious, right, that the majority of the spending is not discretionary. Yeah. It's mandatory spending. The big beautiful bill, we can have that discussion, and I'm sure you all have had a lot, and we can continue to do that. This process, which deals with, and you're right, remember, discretionary is less than a quarter of the money spent every year, but in discretionary, I think it's important to do what we can to spend where possible less. Also, to make sure that we're not misspending and that we are realigning our spending, in this case, to our national security interests and not wasting money, and that's what this would do.
Let's talk about that a bit. So because you referenced earlier that your subcommittee, I think, is in the process now of finalizing the numbers for fiscal year 2025, and we're hoping you'll be back before the rules.
2026.
26, I'm sorry. For
I know that's what
2026,
you meant.
correct. We never made it on 2024 because of the CR. So you all are in the process of that.
Yes, sir.
And I took a look at the press release that you all issued a few days ago, and it very proudly proclaims that you are fully funding the Countering PRC Influence Fund of $400 million. That, it strikes me as something that's very important to you, right?
Yes, sir.
And you agree that it's important for our national security, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The question is, why didn't House Republicans include any provisions in the rescissions package to protect that funding?
Again, if I may.
No, it's a simple question.
No, I know.
The House bill-
because I do
The House
think.
bill that you all passed.
Correct.
Right?
We actually
before
do.
it went to the Senate.
Yes.
Hold on, I'll
yes.
let you.
Yeah.
The House bill, before it went to the Senate, did not include any language protecting the Countering PRC, People's Republic of China, Influence Fund. Okay, included no language. And I'm just trying to understand, because you are proclaiming on your website that you're very proud of the $400 million, of fully funding it for next year, why wouldn't you have protected it in the rescissions package that you passed?
I don't see those two issues being mutually exclusive. By the way,
How are they not?
well, because, again, hopefully, assuming we get some support for the bill, right, this is a process, we have funded it in the past. My intention would be to continue to fund it in the future, and so I don't think that's mutually exclusive.
Okay, let me walk through this. The PRC, the Countering PRC Influence Fund, right, is one of the funds that was identified in the $9 billion rescission. It's one of the sub-accounts, okay? So House Republicans passed this $9 billion rescissions package and did nothing to protect that account from being zeroed out by Russell vote and the OMB.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
When it got to the Senate,
I see what you're saying.
there were some Republicans in the Senate
Okay, I see what you're saying.
who decided that it was really important. And so they added language.
Yep.
Right?
No,
Is
you're
that-
right.
am I wrong?
No.
They added
I'm
language.
glad that. Okay, I see where you're going.
You got it
and
now.
I do now. Okay.
We're on the same page.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I get that. By the way,
But why didn't you do it?
Because, and obviously I was mistaken. I just thought that the Senate rules that we couldn't add text under the 1974 law. And so, by the
Now
way,
that you know,
yeah.
so from now on, when rescissions package comes in next time, you'll add language here on the front end rather than doing it on the back end?
again, like, I totally support, on that aspect that you just mentioned, I totally support what the Senate did there.
Yeah.
Again, I don't claim to be an expert on Senate rules, right? And so, are there potentially, by the way, who knows, other areas that, that we would add, or I would have added language if I thought that it was okay according to the Senate rules? So I will.
What about PEPFAR?
I will always, I will never claim to be an expert on Senate rules. And I will tell you, do I support that language? Yes. Not only do I support it, again, it's reflected in the fiscal year 26 bill, the 24 bill, which is what we're on right now. And again, to use, and I want to be respectful, because this is not to use your language
move to a
about,
different
you think
subject.
it's rich. I also think it's rich that I was criticized by my colleagues, appropriating, who I respect, for actually the language that I just read, that hopefully will be in the record, precisely because I was so strong and continue to be so strong about making sure that money doesn't go to the PRC. No money should go to pay back the PRC, goes to international institutions. So on that,
You've answered the question.
so I agree with the Senate language.
Subject.
I agree with the Senate language.
And I'm grateful you agree with the Senate language,
Yeah.
and I guess I would just say that House Republicans had every opportunity to do that on the front end, here in the House, before it got to the Senate. And I think it's a bit convenient now to say, well, it's, I wasn't familiar with the rescission rules and as to whether or not we could add language to protect aid to Egypt or the PRC language or a variety of other language that was added in the Senate with respect to HIV and AIDS. But let's put that to the side. PEPFAR, because this wasn't about language, this is about funding, right? Senate made the decision to pull $400 million, the PEPFAR rescission, out of this bill. Correct?
Correct.
All right, and you support that?
I support the bill, absolutely.
I know you support the bill, but you support that the PEPFAR funding is no longer part of the rescissions bill.
Yeah, I mean, look, by the way, for the record, I support PEPFAR. And
what
we've
I'm
actually,
asking, yeah. So
and we've actually had hearings on PEPFAR.
So, but if that's the case, why not
if-
support it in the House
if I
on
may.
the front end?
Because do I think that we could absorb the original House language on PEPFAR? Absolutely. The Senate believes that, it's potentially safer to do it their way. It's not a huge change. So, but again, if I may, and this is not really your question, I do support PEPFAR. In the hearings that we've had, even on things that are as important that, for example, that I support, there has to be the question asked, should we do it forever? That's not what we're talking about now, but that's something that we are looking at in the appropriation bill.
Yeah, and I would say, Mr. Chairman, I'll move to a separate subject, but I just will say, this is, I think we're getting into a game of semantics here. The PEPFAR funding is quite substantive. Most of the Republicans, overwhelming majority of the Republicans in the U.S. Senate voted against the amendment to strip PEPFAR funding out of the rescissions package. They did that not because they thought this was a less safe or more safe approach. They did it because they opposed pulling it out. They wanted the PEPFAR funding rescinded, as the vast majority of your colleagues do here in the House on the Republican side. And so I was just asking you, I'm trying to get a sense of, do you say you support the program? If you support the program, then I would hope that there would be a similar effort here in the House on the front end to pull that funding from the rescissions package before it made it to the floor. But in any event, another piece of your fiscal year 2026 budget on the foreign subcommittee that you lead is around countering efforts with respect to our adversaries.
Correct.
Right. I want to get a sense, this is back of the envelope, it really is, I'm just kind of curious. How much does the budget include for fiscal year 2026, just, you sort of, again, back of the envelope, for countering efforts regarding Cuba?
In the 2026 bill?
Yeah. A couple $100 million or what?
No.
Or what's the?
No.
million
It's less. It's again. I believe it's about. I think it's the same as it was in the original bill in
20
fiscal.
million or what?
It's about. I want to say maybe 30, but don't quote me.
Okay, 30 is good.
Let's in the
Let's use that
ballpark.
number.
In the ballpark.
So,
Yeah.
okay, here's the question. So let's say that $30 million, I understand, very important to you. and your constituents, and I think a lot of Americans, right? Let's say that Congress appropriates that figure, and we approve that. Do you believe that that number, the $30 billion... Million, sorry. I had to be there. $30 million for countering Cuba. Do you believe that number is a floor or a ceiling?
There is no disagreement, I think, among a lot of the appropriators that when we put the appropriation bills together, the goal is to have the administration follow that.
So I
Now,
hear you.
Right.
Just
So,
let me
there's
ask you
no
then.
disagreement on that.
Well,
But
because
the
I don't-
rescission process is part of the process.
I hear you. This
Yeah.
isn't actually about the rescission.
Okay,
So I'm not, so the $30 billion,
million.
okay, that's going to go to the State Department to spend on countering Cuba. I'm just trying to get your sense. Is that number the floor or is it the ceiling? That's all I'm asking you. Which is it?
You're saying once it's law, whatever
Once
that
it's
number
law,
is? Yeah. Well, no, it's once it's law, it's law.
It's the
It's
ceiling.
law. Which,
Excuse me, it's
by the way, and so, look,
Wait a minute, sorry, I'm not interrupting you.
Go ahead. No, please.
It's the floor.
well, no, theoretically, you're not supposed to spend above that either.
It's the floor and the ceiling.
I want to make sure I get that right. Yeah, all right, so.
Both.
Well, actually, can I tell you in the actual bill how I have it? It's the
Yeah.
floor. In the way I have it written, no less than.
No less than.
Correct.
Perfect.
But that's how it's written in the bill on
That's
that
how
aspect.
it's written. So
on that part.
that goes to whether it's Secretary of State Blinken, 2 years ago, a year ago, or whether it's Secretary of State Rubio today. Here's the money that Congress has appropriated for countering Cuba. And you cannot spend any less than this, and you are required to spend this number. Right? It is the floor. You can't, we're not going to have you spend less than that amount. Correct?
If that language holds, that's what it
Yes.
would be. If
Okay.
that language holds, that's what it would be.
Here's why. I mean, and I can glean from your reaction that it's a bit surprising on my question.
No.
And the reason why is...
I always actually appreciate your
Oh,
questions.
I appreciate that. Well, because here's why. You and I agree. Ranking Member Rosa DeLauro agrees. Every single Democrat, I think it's safe to say, in the House of Representatives agrees with you. Russell Vogt does not agree with you. In Politico, this is today, as he's describing the spending powers of the Congress, it is one of the most constitutional foundational principles, but that power of the purse does not mean it's a ceiling. It is not a floor. Right? OMB Director Vogt's view, which is a ludicrous view, unmoored from any kind of constitutional or statutory basis, is that if we appropriate dollars, if you appropriate $30 million to counter Cuba, very important to your constituents, Secretary Rubio can look at the document and say, I'm going to spend $10. That's how much I'm spending in fiscal year 2026, because it isn't a floor. The rest of this, I understand it's important to Mario Diaz-Balart,
But I think
to the
it's-
Congress, but I'm not entitled or required to spend a single dime more than what I deem necessary as the executive
I
branch.
clearly see your point. I clearly see your point.
And you disagree with him.
Well, no. Oh, no, wait, hold on. It's very important to make a important observation, which is it's dependent. It depends how it's written. In some cases, we give flexibility. In some cases, we say not less. In some cases, we say not more. So I just want to make sure that we
Sure.
make the point
I appreciate that caveat.
it's a little bit of a generalized statement, and I just want to make sure that we're accurate in what we're saying.
But what your staff had just handed you.
In
I
that
know-
case, in that specific case, then I would agree with you.
I appreciate that. And I will just venture to say that I have one last question, but I will venture to say that quote there might end up in a lawsuit here in the next couple of weeks, because the administration, as you know, we're deep in litigation now.
Yes.
Over impoundment. I appreciate the chairwoman. I will, I just have one question. You represent... Well, Mr. Diaz-Balart... Well, I agree with you on the answer part. I don't know about the question, but I hear you. I'm trying to get to it, Madam Chair. I appreciate your indulgence. I just want to talk a bit. I'm trying to look for the piece of paper here. Here it is. You represent South Florida, town of Miami Lakes,
Among others, yes.
among others. And the town of Miami Lakes, my understanding is getting a new zip code because of your efforts.
That's
You're working on it.
Working on it, yes, sir.
House is going to vote on a bill soon.
Hopefully.
Very exciting. I know how important that is to communities in my neck of the woods. You know, I was looking online. Do you know how I discovered that the town of Miami Lakes was getting a new zip code potentially because of your efforts? I was looking at WLRN. It's the only publication I could find that would print a story about your efforts regarding a new zip code for the town of Miami Lakes. WLRN is a public affiliated station, right?
Yes, I believe so.
It is, I can
believe so.
assure you. It's
Yep.
public television.
Okay.
These cuts are going to be devastating. They're going to be really devastating to public television, to public radio in every state in the country, including in Florida and, of course, in Colorado. It's a shame. I wish you all would reverse
Can I just
this.
put one just little clarification? In South Florida, there are numerous local publications, which we have, for example, the community newspapers. That's in all the communities. Just so you know, just to make you feel comfortable, there are numerous private publications that cover what happens in D.C. locally, and so I hope you feel reassured
Well, none of them
that
about the
that's
zip
not
code.
the only one.
None of them about your legislative efforts on the zip code, except for public radio. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Congressman Diaz-Villar, I do have I don't remember exactly. Did the Inflation Reduction Act money, did that go through the appropriations process and the American Rescue Plan?
No. No, sir.
It did not go through the appropriations
No,
process,
sir.
did it? I didn't think it did, and I just listened to. But it did not go through appropriations,
Correct, sir.
right? And it went through without a single Republican vote. Both of them did,
Correct, sir.
correct? We're on the same page. All right. So I'm looking at these numbers. I know you may not have the exact numbers year to date, but right now I'm looking, and it says that the federal government has spent $5.345 trillion year to date. Now, that would include mandatory spending and other things, but the second largest category of spending right now is the interest on the national debt. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, sir.
That's what it says anyway here. Would you be surprised to know that federal spending is up $318 billion this year over last year?
That unfortunately does not surprise me.
So when we talk about an $9 billion cut right here in this piece of legislation, is that correct?
That's it.
Okay, $9 billion. So if we just use these numbers here, so total federal spending is up $318 billion. If we take this $8 billion, total federal spending is still up $310 billion instead of $318 billion. I'll be honest with you. I'm a little taken back at the whining and crying over what amounts to less than 0.5% of discretionary spending. And I'm a little embarrassed, candidly, that with Republicans in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, that we can't actually cut a little more. And I just hope we're able to continue to show the American taxpayers where their dollars have been going. We showed them tremendous sums of waste, fraud, and abuse over the last several months. I hope that we're able to get back to showing the American taxpayers where their dollars have been going, and that we're actually able to come back with a rescissions package that does significantly more than the $9 billion. And again, I want the American citizens to know, total federal spending this year from last year up $318 billion. Now, you would think the sky was falling and the sun wasn't going to come up tomorrow if you listen to all of the whining and crying. But just factually speaking, if you take this rescission of $9 billion out of the $318 billion increase over last year, you still got a $310 billion increase in federal spending That's year-to-date, by the way. It will be more than that at the end of the fiscal year. We got to do a better job of reducing the deficit and getting economic growth. And if we don't, the interest cost is going to consume the majority of federal spending in the near future. And with that, Madam Chair, I don't have any questions for the gentleman. I just wanted to make the point, this is a drop in the bucket, and we're just getting started on reducing the deficit in this country. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Leisure Fernandez, you're recognized.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that very understanding look in your eyes as you recognized me. You know, and as I listen to this conversation and the comments, it just gets me every single time. When they talk about the need to reduce federal spending, the need to address deficits, anybody who voted for that big, ugly bill that is now law, which increases the deficit by $4 trillion, should feel ashamed about talking about deficit spending and debt. It's $4 trillion. $4 trillion. The interest rate is taking it up to that and even more. And that's why when they talk about attacking waste, fraud, and abuse to save American money, those are meaningless words after you voted for that bill. Those are meaningless words. When, in addition to increasing the deficit, the main beneficiaries of that bill were the billionaires. That is waste. Because the reality is they don't need the money. And it was pointed out earlier that the Trump administration is burning 500 tons of food that went to waste instead of feeding the hungry. And since his inauguration as president, Trump has made millions off of his presidency. He's made more than $320 million in fees alone from his meme coin, and now he's exempt from regulation. No president in history has ever made so much money selling his presidency and influence, ever. So when we talk about fraud and abuse, let's talk about that kind of waste, fraud, and abuse, because what I see it is destruction, deception, and corruption. So in this bill, we see Republicans once again taking away from the poor and rural areas. So when I hear my colleague who's now left saying they shouldn't, why are they whining about this $9 billion? It's because I know the places that are going to suffer when they lose NPR, PBS, and public broadcasting stations, because it's the local stations that are going to be hurt the most. And you know, they keep doing it. Republican bills and DOGE and Trump want to destroy public education, public health care, public lands, and now public broadcasting. So let's talk a bit about public broadcasting. We heard earlier today that Americans really want and are looking forward to us cutting public broadcasting. Do you agree with that, Representative Diaz-Balart?
Can you please repeat that?
So earlier today in this hearing, I believe it was Representative Norman, said this is what Americans really want. They want us to cut the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Do you agree with that?
I don't know if he quite said that, but he may have. I do agree that there has been, like in unfortunate other parts of the government, a lot of waste, a lot of misuse. There was, which I did not participate in, but I watched part of it on on the TV while I was in this process, where there was a hearing on that, and it was pretty evident that there has been a lot of waste, a lot of misuse, and I think that's part of the reason why this is that's why this is here.
Yeah. Do you think Americans want you to do these cuts?
I do think that there are multiple alternatives, private sector alternatives. You know, when I was a child, there were only a couple channels. Now there are hundreds or thousands of channels.
Yes.
And I think there is a valid question as whether the taxpayer when there are hundreds, if not thousands
Well, let me tell you,
of channels.
The question was about whether Americans want this, and let me tell you what it looks like what Americans want. So 1 in 3 Americans use public radio at least once a week. 70% of public radio is considered, Americans think, 70% of Americans think public radio provides a valuable service, and you might be interested in that. That includes 64% of Republicans. They trust the news from public radio. 3 in 4 Americans agree it's important to have public radio for emergency alerts and public safety. And this is a poll that was done recently, because people recognize the importance of public radio and public broadcasting. And they recognize the importance of it because these rural radio stations, especially, and let me tell you, Republican states, they rely on it. Alaska. If you go and read the news, in Alaska, they rely on it. In New Mexico, our tribal radio stations are essential because some of those places, there aren't the alternatives that you mentioned, or they aren't for free. And that's the importance of public. That's the importance of the public. So we know that there was a desire by Senator Rounds to preserve tribal broadcasting. Can you tell me where in the bill? He said he's voting for this bill because they're going to preserve funding for tribal broadcasting. Can you tell me where in the bill there is the preservation for tribal public broadcasting?
Let me see if I can get you some specifics on that. I would, by the way, respectfully mention that when you're saying that it is so popular and there's so much audience, great. And then the question, I think there's a valid question as to, well, then why should the taxpayer have to pay for it? And I just, again, respectfully, when you say it's not for free, it's not free. It's being paid for by the taxpayer. When government provides a service, not only is it not free, usually it costs a lot more than when the private sector provides it. So, and again, very respectfully, I just think that's a little bit of kind of highlights kind of the disagreement. When you say government programs are free, I would respectfully say government programs are not free. And what we can show time and time again is usually government programs are a lot more expensive than those that are provided by the private sector. So respectfully, I think that's part of the disagreement.
There is a disagreement not on who is it free for? And that's the purpose of public. That is precisely the purpose of public. And it is an ideological difference. I agree with you. That when you talk about everything being for profit and profit making, that means you are going to be inserting profit in everything they do. And that is the difference. We heard in this committee, they shouldn't worry about Sesame Street and these important public programs because they're going to get picked up by Netflix. That is not free to the family that cannot afford it. So I'm talking about free for everybody in the public. And there are, and so that was what I was saying.
Okay.
Is who are they free to? And I think that it is important to have public education, even though there are private schools. I think it is important to have public transportation, even though you can have toll roads and you can have your own private car. There are certain goods that are important, that are key, and that's why somebody in a Republican state like Alaska voted against that. And so was there anywhere in the bill that
I have an answer.
protected?
Not that I can find. I cannot find anything in the bill that specifically protects what you were asking.
Right, because there's nowhere in the bill that protects these kinds of services. There are all these deals made, and then there's these pinky promises that, we're going to protect tribal radio. And I think that that's what's really key, is with regards to tribal radio, they understand that. I have a letter here from the National Congress of American Indian, and what they say is enactment of H.R. 4 and eliminating the Corporation for Public Broadcasting funding would devastate tribal communities. by severely impacting tribal broadcast capacity and essential tribal public safety infrastructure that protects communities during emergencies. It would put tribal lives at greater risk. Madam Chair, I request unanimous consent to enter into the record the letter from the National Congress of American Indians stating this, and it is dated. I need to make sure.
It's okay, you're going to hand it in, we'll get it.
June 10th, 2025. Well, you know, some people are strict on this, and I admire the requirement to actually have that data here, Madam Chair.
Without objection.
And this is the point that I am making, is that there are things that are about emergencies, that are about the public, that are key, and that I think are important. So if you think people should just pay for everything and there should always be a profit motive, that is honestly a disagreement we have about how we look at things. Because I do think that we should not be having those kinds of problems. And, you know, the emergency alerts, there is nothing in this bill that would protect your beloved communities who might be relying on the multiple sources of public radio and public television that you also just pointed out, is there?
Again, and that's why I want to make sure I'm accurate with my answers, and so I got you that specific. There's no doubt that there are, and because I do live in an area that's obviously prone to storms, right? And there are, fortunately, and of course, with the caveat or the understanding that I happen to live in one of the states that's the most prepared for, you know, hurricanes for obvious reasons. There are multiple ways that people get that information. And I'm speaking for the state of Florida.
You're speaking for the state of Florida, and this is the thing, is as it was pointed out for Colorado, as we've heard, and if you go and pull Kansas, the people in Kansas are terrified because they rely on these programs. The people of New Mexico know that the public radio stations are essential. We just heard about the important role they play in Colorado. Not everywhere is densely populated with multiple avenues. And that's the other thing about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the educational programs that are available for free. I was reading an article online about a Kansas grandmother who said, my days are filled because I can see the Antique Roadshow, but more importantly, my grandchildren learned how to count with Count Dracula. Right? Who in this room, I mean, I'll ask around, is like, did any of your kids watch Sesame Street? I'm looking, Mr. Jack, Representative Griffith, you always have, none of your kids did. Well, you are probably the exception, because so many others did. In the audience, everyone raised their hands who, you know, oh, look at the smiles on the faces that are coming up, because people do look at these things. And, you know, we fell in love with Sesame Street. We fell in love with the kindness and understanding shared among the characters. And I think that this idea of keeping kindness and generosity in our public arena and as one of the public goods that we do is so key. And that is what the public television programs do. Think about that. Think about how kind. Like even Grouch, the Grouch, right? Oscar, like everybody's nice to Oscar and helps him get through these things. Right? We need us all to see, like maybe we're a little too grouchy sometimes because of this role we play. But like if you step into that role of what Sesame Street cheats, it's let me understand why you're grouchy and maybe I can understand that, right? But right now, you know, all these rescissions, they're sort of like the Cookie Monster. Like the Cookie Monster, you know, he's eating caviar instead of cookies because, you know, we're giving all these tax benefits to the billionaires and we're eating up the public good and we're eating up kindness and generosity and things that are free to the people who most need them. Representative DSB-Law, and that's what I was talking about.
And I thank the gentlelady, but again, I just remind everybody respectfully, it's not free. It's very
No,
expensive.
The taxpayers are doing it. And that's the
Correct,
question.
correct.
And the taxpayers pay for a lot of things. We just, in that big ugly bill, you actually cut royalty rates for oil and gas companies. You cut them by about 4%, down to 12%, which gave away millions of dollars, which gave away more than the $1 billion that you're cutting from this. And let me tell you, there was no need to do that. We have record oil and gas profits, and in the state of New Mexico, we have twice the royalty rate now, 25%. Record sales on our latest lease. So it's all who's paying for it. The decisions you made in that bill where that big bird didn't deserve it, the people who cannot afford to stream and pay for Netflix didn't deserve it, but oil and gas companies deserve it. It's never free. But we gave away some freebies to the oil and gas industry. Representative DeLauro, the Trump administration, this life-saving nutritional aid, was it about 1.5 children could have been fed with that for a week?
It is unbelievable, rotting in a storage space because no delivery mechanism put together because it's been shuttered.
And is that, do you consider that, Representative Diaz-Balart, the idea that we would let that much food go, is that waste in your mind?
I think that was highly unfortunate, and frankly, something that I would never try to justify.
It's waste, and that's not a good use. That is like wasting taxpayer dollars.
Why is that not
there is a
considered
cost
waste?
to that? There is a cost. So I wanted to just go and quickly, because I don't want to get tagged by our wonderful chairwoman here. So
Nothing is
as you were
quick,
having all of this discussion of why it's important to do this, now, as I understand, when you work on the appropriations in your subcommittee, it's not easy. You have hearings, you have discussions, you debate it among yourself, you bring it administration, you do all of that. Is that correct, Representative Diaz-Balart?
I would agree with you, yes, and I would agree with you, no, it's not easy.
Right, it's not easy. So
I think they're the ranking member, full committee ranking member and I are in full agreement,
you're in full agreement. And so did you have the same kind of debate about this rescission package?
I met multiple times with ONB, but...
Did your committee meet?
And we actually had a committee meeting where we had folks come in, and we did.
Was there a hearing on the rescission? Is that correct?
But obviously, it clearly doesn't have the same level. I would concede that it's not at the same level that having, multiple hearings, which is what we try to do in the Appropriations Committee. So I love the Appropriations Committee. So I believe that the appropriations process is the best process, but I will tell you that we did have folks from the administration come in 2 hearings.
And you were the subcommittee chair when this budget, because you were the subcommittee chair last year, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And right now, by the stroke of a pen from the president, all that work that went into that thing is gone. Is that ranking member? This is your point, right?
This is my point. We hammered out appropriations bills, and appropriations bills are $1.7 trillion every single year. And to get there, you have to give a little, and you have to get a little. And you go back and forth to meet the needs of the people that we represent through these 12 subcommittees.
And the
And
reason
you hammered it out, and then we come to an agreement. We get it signed by the President of the United States, not a suggestion, a law of the land. And in this circumstances, I will just say that we had an unelected individual, a billionaire in Elon Musk, decide what was going to be spent, how it was going to be spent, what was going to be cut. By what authority? None. Zero authority to take $425 billion, which we tracked. in the 12 subcommittees that they either froze, terminated, or paused in some way. That's not what we do here. That's not the process. We can hammer out stuff. You know, the chairman will say, look, we can't go here. But, you know, I'll say, well, maybe we can go there. How do we come to a meeting of the minds? That is done every day with the Appropriations Committee. And it has been done over the years. And that is what is being abrogated.
And that is all of that, once again, going back to what is public. Your hearings are public.
Public,
Our
absolutely.
debates are public. And what you had here was perhaps a private meeting. Was it,
No,
was
we-
that?
we had-
did you
We
have a
actually,
public-
we
did
did
you
have,
a
we did
public
have,
hearing?
we did have, yes, we did.
Did you have a ranking member? There seems to be disagreement on that.
The
We
subcommittee.
had no hearings on the rescission package.
No hearings on this.
None.
And
None.
that's it.
Can I
That-
want to make sure that I'm accurate. No, we had hearings and meetings regarding what the administration was doing, not specifically on the rescission
That's on
package.
So you had
appropriations.
no hearing-
We have hearings on appropriations, but
Because,
none
because
on
the law,
rescission package.
because the law, which is being followed, the 1974 law, created this process of rescissions. Now, I would, by the way, agree with, I think, both of you,
You have to come
I
back to
like-
the Congress.
congressional process. But I would also argue that there has been so much misspent money that this is why the administration felt obligated to do this rescission
Well, you
package.
can't willy-nilly do that. I just have to say this. No, the 45 days, yes, is legal. They're abusing and in violation of the Impoundment Control Act, but the 45 days is legal. However, that says you have to come back and say to the Congress, this is what I want to do, and you have to have a process that follows that. None, zero, nada. Oh,
well-
no, this
well,
is not the
actually,
hearing.
I mean, I feel for you because you guys have worked so hard, and with a very quick, darn and dirty, it's going to be gone. Thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Ledger Fernandez. Mr. Griffith, you're recognized.
Madam Chair, I could probably go on for hours in disagreement, but I gave a
Please do.
too long, as my colleagues pointed out, a too long soliloquy the last time we had the rescissions package up. I will just note it was kind of fun to listen. My staff hates it, my wife hates it, but I have this thing about music lyrics that just pop in my head. So Billy Hill, who wrote The Glory of Love, and Benny Goodman, who originally recorded it, would have loved your reference, ranking member, when you said you've got to give a little and you've got to get a little. It comes from that song as an original piece of musical artwork. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
I always enjoy listening
No,
to
I
you.
was saying that.
I do too, and now you're going to make me have that song in my head, too.
Gotta give.
Mr. Jack.
Take a little.
No, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just, as the freshman, I'm always the last member to ask questions, but if I could, Chairman Diaz-Balart, just give you an opportunity to offer a closing statement, a closing kind of message as it relates to why it's so important to codify these rescission.
Well, I
clauses.
appreciate it, and I'll be brief. By the way, just for the record also, if I may, I was just, Mr. Nagus said that the only, outlet that covered the zip code, it was also covered by Florida Politics, it was covered by Florida Daily, it was
Television,
covered.
public television.
It was covered from Miami Laker. So I'm just saying that there's other avenues, and I just wanted
I
to
don't-
make sure that was in the
None
record.
of those are television.
There are multiple,
through.
multiple outlets. Thank you, sir. Look, we've discussed this enough. Where I totally agree with the ranking member is that, to me, the best process is the appropriations process, and which is what we're starting to do it. But it would be, frankly, just not serious to not understand that, in particular in the last 4 years, the amount of money that was spent and wasted was just really offensive. And I know that there's so much concern about the administration using a legal process established in law to come up with $9 billion worth of reductions. But I don't remember the outrage, and I repeat this, but I think it's an important note. I do not remember the outrage about the abuse of process when the previous president spent money, as I recall, that was neither authorized nor appropriated, and the Supreme Court said it's unconstitutional, and he continued to do it. And there was no outrage then. Getting back, however, to this particular issue. It's a $9 billion rescission. It went through the House. I think the Senate refined it, which is part of this process. It's in front of us today. Do I think that cutting $9 billion to make sure that we are spending money wisely is too severe of a cut? Absolutely not. Do I think this is a step in the right direction? Absolutely. Do I agree with some of my colleagues that I think all of us would like to get back to, again, the appropriations process, and the good news that under the leadership of Tom Cole, and yes, the full committee ranking member, we are working through that process as we speak. But for the issue at hand, a $9 billion rescission to get us back on track, to make sure that we are spending wisely, that we are spending without wasting money, is a good step in the right direction. So thank you for the opportunity. I think this is something that merits our support, our vote, and I would ask for your support. And thank all of you who serve on this committee for the work that you do for the American people.
I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jack. Mr. Langworthy.
Thank you,
you're
Madam Chair.
recognized.
I appreciate the recognition. Madam Chair, and I want to thank the chairman and the ranking member for being here. We have hardworking Americans across this country and all of our districts that have had to face real difficult financial decisions every day, and especially the inflation they've suffered for under the last 5 years or so. They've had to cut back in their households on groceries, car expenses, home repairs that they could put off. Families don't have the luxury of wasting money, and they expect us here in Washington at the Capitol to live by that same standard. Yet here we're debating whether or not we should be reclaiming for them $9.5 billion of unspent and unnecessary funds that are just sitting in government accounts. Mr. Diaz-Balart, how do you see this rescissions package putting taxpayers first, not only by cutting wasteful spending now, but also by setting the precedent that Congress will once again be a responsible steward of hard-earned taxpayer dollars going forward?
Thank you, sir. As I said at the beginning, I think this is this $9 billion package is a prudent realignment of priorities and spending less money. And I hope, and I am confident, because I'm confident particularly in the leadership of Chairman Tom Cole, who you all know very well in this committee, that we are going to be able to continue, again, through the appropriations process, making sure that we spend money wisely, that we save money as well in areas where we can save money, and I think there are a number of areas. And if we talk about the area that Chairman Cole has put me in giving me the responsibility and the privilege of chairing that subcommittee, as I mentioned before, you're going to see the bill that passed out of subcommittee, a 22% reduction, while I strongly believe, we are doing more to confront the adversaries of the United States. We are fulfilling our obligation to our allies, but we're doing so without wasting money and making sure that it is aligned with the national security interests of the United States. And so that process is ongoing. And again, I respect folks who don't want to cut anything. I get that, or who don't like the specific cuts in this proposal. I get that as well. I respect that. But I think it's important to mention, once again, that this is within the law that was passed by Congress in 1974. And so again, I think what we're looking at here is an important step in that realignment to make sure that the money, particularly in the area that I'm directly responsible, which is, again, foreign policy, that it is aligned with our national security interests, our national interest, and that, in my view, is, again, supporting our allies without wasting money, confronting our adversaries, but making sure that we do it in a way that is fiscally responsible. It can be done. Sir, a little while ago, I talked about, I'm very proud of the bill that we're in right now, the CR, which we weren't under a CR, but we are. But that bill actually cut 6%, spends 6% less than the previous year. And I heard all these horror things that were going to happen. No, on the contrary. When you spend less taxpayer money, you do it efficiently, and you fulfill your obligations, everybody wins. This today is a step in that direction.
Well, thank you very much for your commentary and for all your hard work on behalf of the American people and for everyone on the Appropriations Committee and for what you do. And it's really hard work. The reality is most taxpayers don't even know where their hard-earned tax dollars are going. The size and the scope of the federal government is beyond most Americans' mindset. And I think what we've been through in the last 6 or 7 months has been quite a experience in accounting and accountability and shining a bright light on some things that people assumed were happening with programs and weren't. I mean, it's certainly been educational for even members of Congress, some of the things that have been uncovered at the front end of the year. So I really, truly believe that this is a step in the right direction. This is important legislation and a priority to set going forward. And with that, I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Langworthy. I have just one or two questions I'd like to ask and a couple of comments. I want to thank you, Mr. Diaz-Balart, particularly. I thank the ranking member for being here too, but I want to thank you for saying that, quote, government programs are not free. Those programs are paid for by hardworking taxpayers. I make that point all the time. The money that the federal government spends is not manna from heaven. It is taken from hardworking taxpayers. And there's a lot of talk going on now about recent elections in New York, about how there is going to be an increase in government spending. And I think we do have a term for that in terms of taking money from some and giving it to others. And I agree with President Trump that that's generally defined as communism. And yes, there is a common good, but the American people are the most generous people in the world, and they are willing to help others who need their help. And we've seen that over and over and over again. So there's generosity for public good. I've given contributions to public radio and public TV, but I don't think it's fair to take money from some to give it to those programs. I just want to get one major thing in the record. We're hearing a lot about these horrible, what's happening to the government in terms of the horrible increase of $4 trillion that was just passed in the big, beautiful bill. But I haven't heard anybody talk about, or maybe, I think Mr. Scott touched on it before. Please tell us how much was spent under President Biden with not one single Republican vote, and how much was added to the debt as a result of the reconciliation bill passed by Democrats and President Biden.
And again, I want to make sure that I have an accurate response to it. I will get you the exact number, but I think, to your point, it was so much money that it actually created the largest spike in inflation in decades, precisely because of the amount of money that was spent. And I will get, I think I want to make sure.
I have it.
You probably do, and I want to make sure I'm accurate.
I think it was $11 trillion that was spent under President Biden, and $6 trillion was added to the debt.
And there is no argument and no debate that inflation skyrocketed for the first time since, I believe, the Jimmy Carter administration.
That's correct.
And by the way, that is not, you want to know, I have tried to be very accurate in answering questions, and I think the questions are important. And I also tried to avoid getting into other subject matter. But since it was brought up so many times, in the district that I represent, if the big beautiful bill had not passed and become law, and I don't represent a wealthy district, the tax increase to the average family in the district that I represent was going to be 24%. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else seeking to testify on the Senate amendment to H.R. 4?
Madam Chair, may I say something? I'm here to
Thank you,
testify.
Ms. Delora. I don't have any questions for you.
No, I don't want to, I wasn't asking for answer. I was asking if I can say something. I'm here testifying as well.
Well, I think we've gone way over with your side, so thank you very much. Seeing none, this closes the hearing
Wow.
portion of our meeting.
Speaks volumes about what we do. Oh, I do want to see if I can put it in the record.
Without
William McCraven,
objection.
cutting the State Department and USAID will put every American at risk. Russ vote appropriations process has to be less bipartisan. I think it speaks volumes of where this administration wants to take us.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Without objection, the committee stands in recess for 10 minutes or so. Good evening. The committee will come to order without objection.
This
As a result,
Something? Volumes of where this administration wants to take us.
without objection.
Thank you.
Without objection, the committee stands in recess for 10 minutes or so. Thank you. Good evening. The committee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. Today, the Rules Committee is convening to consider a single measure, the Senate amendment to H.R. 4, the Rescissions Act of 2025. H.R. 4 has returned to us from the Senate for final consideration. We're here to get this legislation across the finish line and to the President. It's unfortunate that the Senate was not able to execute all of President Trump's recommended rescissions. However, the bill before us still rescinds $9 billion that President Trump has identified as wasteful and unnecessary spending. Our work in this committee here today, as it relates to H.R. 4, is an exercise in restoring fiscal sanity that was robbed from the American people by the previous administration. The money that we're clawing back in this rescissions package is the people's money. We ought not to forget that. House Republicans have already detailed to the American people the billions in wasteful spending that we're attacking in this legislation. From surgical precise cuts to waste within foreign aid, to halting taxpayer dollars being funneled to the ideologues at PBS and NPR, we're making good on the mandate that Americans gave us. Let me quickly remind everyone that the process we're engaging in is not some sort of flagrant and outlandish anomaly or even a stark deviation from the norm, as some may claim. The Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974 that Congress set up more than half a century ago allows for this process of enacting rescissions of funds to be carried out. This is the same process that has played out in previous Congresses. It's nothing new. Yes, wasteful spending does occur in Washington. The American people know this to be true, and they want to see immediate change. Republicans in the People's House are the ones who are orchestrating that change with the rescissions package and rescissions packages to come. Americans want their tax dollars to be spent prudently and not chucked carelessly at things that do not align with their values and their own fiscal sensibilities. This is not a hard concept to grasp. Republicans understand it quite well, believe me. It's time that we get the rescissions package across the finish line and secure another significant win for the American people. They're looking to us to act. With that, I look forward to today's discussion, and I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. McGovern, for any comments he wishes to make.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And before I go to my opening remarks, I just have a question. I've been following the media reports all day today as we've been awaiting this meeting today. It's been reported that many of the Republicans on the Rules Committee are concerned about the fact that the Jeffrey Epstein issue is not going away. And we had some reporting earlier that from Jake Sherman at Punchbowl that Speaker Mike Johnson and his leadership team were discussing offering an Epstein-related resolution to try to quell the furor of members of the House Rules Committee. Then there's another report that just came out that says that there may be two bills that are being brought before the Rules Committee. One on the rescissions, the rule on the rescissions package, and then a separate rule on Epstein. But we weren't noticed about the second rule, and so I was wondering if the chair could clarify the situation and maybe share with us the language on the Epstein matter. Is it binding? Is it not? Is it? I mean, so I yield to the chair if she could help enlighten us.